Hey, we're really grateful everybody took their time out of their busy life to join us today. We're having trouble with this microphone, so I don't think you'll have trouble hearing me. So welcome. We're here to talk about primarily AES Indiana's recent rate hike filing and what everybody needs to know about this rate case. Just a quick agenda. Going to do some quick intros. I'll give a little bit of some background, a little bit of context. Then we'll give you a full-blown overview of the rate case, all the nuts and bolts, the ins and outs. What is this case all about? What is AES actually asking for? How you can take action, how you can have your voices heard, participate in the process, and then we'll end with a Q&A. The folks talking tonight will be myself. I am Kerwin Olson, the Executive Director at Citizens Action Coalition. Our Program Director, Ben Inskeep, will do the most of the talking and the heavy lifting on the ins and outs of the rate case. And then our Director of Development, Kelly Hammond, will close it out with everything you need to do about how to get involved, how to get engaged, and facilitate the Q&A at the end. Just a little bit about CAC. I'm sure most of you know who we are. We're Indiana's oldest and largest consumer and environmental organization, founded over 50 years ago, back in 1974. A bunch of labor unions, community organizers, and others saw the need for a consumer voice before the Indiana General Assembly on issues related to energy and utility affordability. We advocate on issues regarding energy policy, utility reform, healthcare, and many other issues, good governance before the State House. We rely on support from folks just like you to do the work that we do, so thank you very much. And we sort of hit at all levels. We're out there in the field doing grassroots organizing community, primarily led by Bryce over there, our lead organizer, filming everything. He's everywhere and nowhere all at once. Down there at the State House, legislative work, of course, myself and my partner in crime, Lindsay, wherever she may be. She was here a minute ago. I don't see her now, though. And then, of course, our work before the Regulatory Commission, led by our attorney, Jen Washburn, our program director, Ben Inskeep, our legal assistant, Reagan Kurtz, and all of the wonderful folks that help us out before the IURC. We've got some resources, of course. We've got our website where we've got a page dedicated to the AES rate case, so be sure to check it out. This presentation will be posted on our website along with a recording of the town hall. Will be on our YouTube channel. And please sign up for our emails to stay connected on all of the issues of import, whether it's related to your utility or whether it's related to what's happening down at the Indiana General Assembly. Just going to do a quick talk about Indiana laws and policies, which aren't exactly the most consumer friendly, if you will. We lack meaningful electric utility affordability programs and consumer protections here in the state of Indiana. We have no electric low-income rate program for income qualified, low-income households, none. Our neighbors to the west, our neighbors to the east, both have percentage of income payment plans for low-income customers, for fixed-income customers. Our neighbors to the north have a statewide assistance program to help low-income poor people pay their bills. Here in Indiana, we have a whole lot of nothing statewide to help low-income folks afford their monthly bills. Very few protections from disconnections, from loss of service. CAC believes strongly that all Hoosiers are entitled to continued and uninterrupted provision of essential human services, which include electric utilities. And we have very few protections from disconnections. And of course, thanks to the General Assembly, we dismantled and canceled the Energizing Indiana program. We dismantled and canceled and got rid of net metering, so programs that were actually empowering customers to take control of their energy, to make their own choices, control their bills, have some competition for the utilities. The Indiana General Assembly took those away. Furthermore, policies passed year after year after year at the General Assembly continue to undermine affordability and continue to undermine the regulatory process. Every single year, we see bills passed that provide trackers that allow utilities to add fees on your bills year after, all those little added fees, riders, trackers, whatever you want to call them. They could raise your rates outside the context of a general rate proceeding. They have subsidized big tech data centers to the hilt, including in 2019 with a 50-year sales tax exemption that we now know hindsight's 2020, but that has opened up the floodgate to a data center problem here in Indiana. They continue to pass legislation that removes the discretion of regulators, the Regulatory Commission. What is the primary function of the Indiana Utility Regulatory Commission and those that regulate investor-owned utilities? The primary function is to act as a surrogate to competition, to be competition in the absence thereof, be an economic regulator to the utility, yet year after year after year, including this last legislative session, they pass bills that say the IURC shall approve, the IURC shall approve, the IURC shall approve. And that eliminates and reduces the authority, the discretion, and the flexibility of the IURC to do their job and play that role as a surrogate to competition and an economic regulator of the utility. And not only that, they continue to refuse to hear positive pro-consumer legislation that gets introduced. Last session, Senator Jackson, Senator Hunley, Representative Pryor, Representative Hamilton, year after year before them, Senator Breaux introduced bills, good bills to protect low-income customers, to provide customers with choices. Not only, they don't even get heard in the committees, don't even get heard, don't even get entertained. So we have our challenges down at the General Assembly. I can assure you, the legislators sitting in the front row have pretty much voted no on all that stuff. So. And what is the result of this bid? We sent out a press release a couple of weeks ago. What we have seen at Citizens Action Coalition over the last 12 months is rate increases of historic proportions. In the last 12 months, between July 2024 and July 2025, what have we seen? The average increase in an electric bill for a customer of an Indiana investor-owned electric utility, there are 5 of them, NIPSCO, CenterPoint, Duke, AES Indiana, I&M, those customers have realized on average a $28 a month increase on their electric bill. Here in Indianapolis, that's AES Indiana, who customers have realized $17 a month from July 24 to July 25. And let's not forget, they're in right now for a significant rate increase. Largest average rate increase that we've seen in at least 2 decades. We look back going 20 years at the IUR annual bill survey, and that's been the result. And ultimately, what do we have? A worsening affordability crisis. Affordability is the word of the day. Everybody heard affordability, affordability, affordability during the election season. But what do we know? About 1 in 4, at least 1 in 4, can't pay their bill, can't pay their energy bill. The 211 line that folks call for help, that low-income folks call when they need help and assistance with something, help with utility bills is the number 2 reason that people call 211, exceeding requests for food, healthcare, transportation, or employment. Folks are calling 211 more than ever just for help in paying their utility bill. Let's look at just Indiana, or Indianapolis with AES Indiana. In the first 6 months of this year, nearly half of AES customers on a monthly basis receive a disconnection notice. Half of AES customers in Indianapolis receive a disconnect notice every single month. That is a clear indication of a problem. That is a clear indication that folks cannot afford an essential human service that is necessary for folks to participate in society in a meaningful way. We're not talking about a streaming subscription. We're not talking about cable TV. We're not talking about Xbox. We're talking about electricity to keep the lights on, keep the milk fresh, take a hot shower, keep your house warm in the wintertime, cool in the summertime. 21,000 households disconnected this year, loss of service, unthinkable. And 43,000 residential customers were reported to collection agencies because of a delinquent utility bill. They're already having a tough time with life, people.
now.
They can't pay their utility bill,
Yeah.
and these folks are referring them to a collection agency. Note for legislation, maybe we outlaw reporting utility delinquencies to credit agencies, as other states have done. There has to be a better solution.
All right now.
There has to be a better solution than threatening people with disconnecting their service, and then disconnecting their service, forcing loss of service and quality of life. There has to be a better solution out there, and we can get there if we have a meaningful conversation. But the supermajority at the Indiana General Assembly, year after year after year, blocks those conversations from taking place. So we can do better, folks. We can do a lot better, and that's why we're here. And with that, I'll stop talking, because most of you are here to hear Ben Inskeep here. He's dived into this rate case, read it from front to back. He's got a lot of great information. And I'm going to turn it over to Ben, our program director, to give you the nuts and bolts about the AES rate case. And again, we are so grateful that you are here. Thank you for coming.
Thank you, Carolyn. All right, we appreciate it, Carolyn. I'm Ben Inskeep. I'm our program director here at Citizens Action Coalition. Folks in the back, you hearing okay? All right, just give me a hand raise or something if I start dwindling down in my tone of my voice and you can't hear me. Okay, let's start diving into the rate case. Before we do, let's talk about our utility here in Indianapolis, AES, Indiana. Some of y'all might remember they used to be known as Indianapolis Power and Light back in the day. Since then, some things have changed. They got acquired by AES Corporation. That's their majority owner. But they also have an owner, a Canadian pension fund, that is a minority owner. They own 30% of the utility here in Indianapolis. Over 500,000 customers are served by AES Indiana. And now remember, customer is the whole household, right? It's not just a person. So that's, roughly 1 million people served by AES Indiana here in central Indianapolis. All right. Oh, and that's one of their power plants that serve us here in Indianapolis. It's the gas plant down in Martinsville area. All right, let's dive into some more details on the rate case itself. So AES filed this rate case at the beginning of June this year. They came to the Indiana Utility Regulatory Commission asking for this rate increase. This commission is a state agency, and they're the entity that the utility has to go to get their rates changed. As Kerwin mentioned, they're a monopoly. That's why you have to go to the regulator to change your prices. So what is going to be decided in this specific case? 3 overarching big picture things. First thing is the revenue requirement. That's the fancy utility speak for how much money is this utility allowed to collect from customers on an annual basis. Right? So how much money do they get to have? If it's too little, they need to increase the rates. If it's too much, we would be asking for a rate decrease. So that's the first big picture item, is how much money. Second big picture item is how are we divvying up that amount of money across different types of customers. Residential customers, commercial customers, industrial customers. This case is going to figure out what is a fair way to split up those costs across different types of customer groups. We want to make sure it's fair and that the residential class isn't getting stuck with an unfair burden compared to these other types of customers here in Indianapolis. Third issue, rate design. How are the charges that we pay on our bill, how are they going to change? Those kind of the very granular nitty-gritty of implementing those first 1 and 2 items there. We'll dive into some of those details here in the upcoming slides. But I also wanted to highlight what's not going to be part of this case. A couple things. This is only going to be impacting our electric utility bills here in Indy. It's not going to be impacting our other utility services, like if you're a natural gas customer or your water bill. Second thing is this case is not going to be adjudicating or figuring out AES Indiana's future energy resource needs. What power plants are they going to build in the future to meet our electricity needs here in Indianapolis? That happens in a separate type of proceeding called the Integrated Resource Planning Process. And it's a public stakeholder process that's actually going on right now. It happens once every 3 years that they update this big picture plan, looking out 20 years in the future. So if you're interested in getting involved and participating in what types of electricity we should have in Indianapolis in terms of the generating resources, that's how you can get involved there. Third item is laws and regulations. As Kerwin noted, we're not happy with the current state of affairs here in Indiana when it comes to our laws and regulations. But this specific rate case is not going to be changing those. It's taking those laws and regulations as given, and we're trying to get the best result in this case with those as a given. Okay, so now let's dive into some of the specifics of this rate case, starting with the revenue requirement. How much money are the rates going to be designed to collect from us as customers on an annual basis? Currently, AES Indiana's rates are designed to collect about $1.6 billion every year from us here in Indianapolis. That's just us here in Indianapolis. AES is part of this big corporation. They have other utilities, including one in Ohio. They got utilities down in El Salvador, I believe. They got generating plants in Asia and South America and Europe. None of that's included in that $1.6 billion. That's just from us here in the Indianapolis area. And they want to increase that amount that they're allowed to collect from us on an annual basis to more than $2 billion by the end of this rate case by 2027. Big money. How does that break down? I think it's important for folks to note some of this increase has already been pre-approved in other cases that have already come to the commission and already been decided. According to AES Indiana's math, that's $275 million, or a 16.7% rate increase that we're going to get hit with over the coming year or two as a result of those already pre-approved rate increases from the commission. On top of that, though, in this case, they're asking for an extra bucket of money, additional on top of that, an extra $192 million, which is an 11.7% increase. Altogether, we're talking $468 million. That's almost a 29% increase in the revenue they're going to be collecting from us in central Indiana over the next year and a half or so. This is going to be phased in over 2 phases. So there's going to be one rate increase followed by another rate increase. First one would happen in April of 2026 under AES Indiana's proposal, and the second one would hit by the beginning of 2027. So big picture, over the next year and a half is when these changes are going to happen. And so the following slides, I'm going to be showing you what is the overall impact by January of 2027 over the next year and a half, essentially. I'm including all of those together in some of these slides. So before we dive into some of those specifics, I want to talk about the cost allocation part of this, because I think this stands out as an aspect of the case that doesn't strike me as particularly fair. AES Indiana has reserved the highest proposed increase for residential customers, while proposing lower increases for commercial customers, and even lower increases yet at the bottom of the slide for industrial customers. And I apologize, I was out of the room earlier. Just want to reiterate if it hasn't already been stated, these slides will be made available on our website, so you don't need to be furiously taking notes. You're welcome to, of course, but we will be posting this, and also if you're in the back and have trouble reading the slides, you'll be able to examine them more closely from our website. How do our bills look over time? This chart is showing us going back 6 years to July 2019, what our bills were, and then how they've since changed over time. And then I've added to that chart, going out into the future, AES Indiana's proposal in this case, to increase our rates even further beyond that. So you see by the end of the graph on the far right, by January of 2027, when the full impact of this case and the other increases are taking effect, we're talking about an average $190 per month bill for a household using about 1,000 kilowatt hours per month. 1,000 kilowatt hours is roughly around average usage level over the course of the year for a monthly bill. Right now we're in summer, so your bills might be quite a bit higher. You might be using more electricity right now because we're often cooling our houses with fans or air conditioning, and that leads to typically higher bills here in Indianapolis in the summertime. So this is more of an average picture of what it looks like on a monthly basis. I want to highlight the fact that this is a $30+ a month increase based on a comparison of when AES Indiana filed this case to by the time January 2027 rolls around when the full impact is realized. So a $30 per month increase in that time period. If you go back just a year to July of 2024, and you compare that to where AES wants to go by January 2027, we're looking at a total of a $55 per month bill increase over a time span of only 3.5 years. That's more than 10% year-over-year increase on our bills here in Indianapolis. That's not sustainable. That's way beyond inflation. That's way beyond the wage increases many families have experienced. So we're paying more and more of our limited income to our electric utility to get this essential service. Let's dive into the details then of what those charges on our bill are going to look like under the AES proposal. We have 2 large buckets of types of charges on our bill. One are the base rates, the base charges, the base rates that only change during these rate case proceedings. And then there's also a second type of charges, the bill trackers or riders or surcharges that are also tacked onto our bills as a result of legislation passed by the General Assembly that allows utilities to add these charges on a more frequent basis in between rate cases. So let's start with those base rates. We have a fixed charge that we pay every month, and for most households that's $17 per month. AES wants to bump that up to $20 per month, or an 18% increase. We also have variable charges that are vary based on how much electricity we use in a monthly period. AES's variable charges are a little different than some other utilities in the country. They have a declining block rate. What this means is the first 500 kilowatt hours you use in a month is charged a higher rate than the next set of electricity you use in that same monthly period. So the first electricity you use, the first 500 kilowatt hours, you currently pay a base charge of about 12.5 cents per kilowatt hour. AES wants to increase that by 30%, up to 16.3 cents by January 2027. The second block, after you've used the first 500 kilowatt hours, electricity usage above that is charged currently 11.3 cents. AES wants to increase that by 33%, up to 15.2 cents. There's even a third block for certain customers that have electric space heating or electric water heaters that I have not shown on this slide, but I wanted to make you aware it staggers down similarly. It's a little bit less than that second block. They want to increase that by a similar amount to the other charges. And then I'll note that trackers are being reduced because these costs are now being incorporated into the base rates. So the costs that are included in the current 1.1 cent that we're paying on our utility bill for those surcharges is being incorporated into those base rates. So that's why we see the tracker go down 69% in terms of that charge, but all the other charges are going along. Okay. Oh, and to highlight some of the flaws we see in this type of rate design, the highest fixed charge of any investor-owned utility, AES already has it, and now they want to increase it. That's higher than Duke, higher than NIPSCO, higher than CenterPoint. We have the highest one here in Indianapolis. The declining block rate is also an antiquated, old-fashioned way of designing energy rates that is not consistent with how costs are caused on the utility. So it sends a bad price signal to customers, and it discourages things like energy efficiency and rooftop solar. It makes it much harder to get a payback that's attractive on those type of investments because your marginal electricity cost is going to be the lowest block, the cheapest energy. And then AES has not proposed a multifamily rate. We think a multifamily rate would be a good type of design to include. What that would mean is folks living in apartments or townhouses and other types of multifamily housing would have a slightly lower cost of energy, lower charges, because folks living in multifamily housing impose fewer costs on the utility. For example, you don't need to run as many power lines, right? For single-family households, I have to have a power line going to my specific household. For a multifamily house, you need fewer utility infrastructure. And they have also not proposed any low-income proposals to help income-qualified families. There's no low-income rate, so even families that cannot afford to pay these prices still have to pay them. Okay. What is driving these increases? There's many factors, so I do want to highlight that it's not one specific thing that is to blame for all of these increases that we've experienced over the years. There's one general theme, and that is we do see, as Kerwin pointed out, legislation that has been passed by the General Assembly giving utilities more opportunity to add new costs on our bills and give our regulators less discretion to say no. So that is an overarching thing. But when we look at the specific factors that AES has proposed in this case, we see a number of key things. First, AES is proposing a much higher profit margin for their shareholders. Where does that profit margin come from? That profit margin is built into our rates. So if we reduce the profit margin for AES shareholders, it means we pay lower rates. Energy guzzling data centers are also causing power prices to spike across the country for things like building new power plants or for purchasing electricity on the market. Those things have skyrocketed in the last year or so as a result of incredible data center growth, which data centers use an enormous amount of electricity. They're the largest type of electricity user on the grid. So we have very significant concerns that we'll get into shortly about some data center proposals here in Indianapolis. Coal ash cleanup is also part of this case. AES wants to spend $140 million on cleaning up certain coal ash messes it has made at certain coal plants they have. Now, we're all for cleaning up coal ash. This is toxic ash sitting in unlined landfills, unlined ponds at the site of these power plants. It's been sitting there for decades, slowly leaching toxic chemicals into our groundwater, our surface water, and posing tremendous risk to human health and the environment. Regulations are now requiring AES to finally clean up some of these messes that it has created. We support them cleaning it up, but we don't think the bill should all be on the backs of Hoosier ratepayers like you and me. AES Indiana has been unsafely dumping this pollution on their property in a way that makes no sense, the way that they knew is going to lead to these problems in the future, and that we think that's not fair for the ratepayers to not have to pay the price to clean up AES Indiana's mess. There's also the shifting costs caused by commercial and industrial customers that I covered on a previous slide, highlighting the fact that commercial and industrial customers are getting a much lower rate increase proposal than residential folks here in Indianapolis. Higher fuel costs are also at play. We've seen the price, for example, of natural gas increase significantly over the past year. And that's a factor in this case. AES wants to build in a higher fuel cost in the bills because of these rising fuel costs. New investment in renewable energy and battery storage, as well as investment in converting their Petersburg coal plant into a natural gas plant, are also factors in this case. The cost of those things are being are being included in our rates as well. Finally, AES Indiana has spent a tremendous amount on transmission and distribution investments that we'll get into shortly. So I'll cover that in more detail soon. All right, let's dive into some of these factors in a little bit more detail. Profit margin first. So the return on equity refers to the electric utility shareholders' return on the equity they provide to AES Indiana to go out and make investments. So in other words, the ROE is in essence the profit margin for the utility, and it's a very important number that is going to be determined in this case. The regulator has the authority to set that profit margin at whatever level they determine is reasonable. So our regulators have enormous discretion in this particular variable of the case, and it has enormous impacts on our bills. This line here on this graph depicts the relationship between the authorized return on equity on the x-axis, or the bottom of the chart, and how big AES Indiana's rate increase would be on the y-axis. So the diamond in the far upper right-hand corner shows AES Indiana's proposal. They want to increase their profit margin, their ROE, from 9.9%, which was authorized in the last rate case, all the way up to 10.7% in this case. That proposal to increase their profit margin, that proposal alone would result in them getting an extra $27.4 million in profit every year, compared to if they had just come in this case saying, you know what, our 9.9% profit margin was plenty. We don't need any more than that. Had they just kept that the same, they could have saved Indiana ratepayers a lot of money. But we don't need to stop there. We could say, wait a second, they're getting how much in profit? 9.9% sounds pretty darn rich. That's a lot more than I'm getting in my 401k. That's a lot more I'm getting in my investments. Why did their shareholders get this high profit margin virtually guaranteed as a monopoly utility? So we could travel down this dotted line to a different value. If we reduce that return on equity, we could reduce the amount of the rate increase that is necessary in this case. In fact, we could go all the way down to a profit margin of 5.1%. And if we reduce it down to 5.1%, they would need $0 increase. That's right. They would still earn a profit, 5% profit, more than 5%, but they wouldn't need to add this extra burden on families here in Indianapolis. And of course, the regulator could decide something in between as well. Let's move on to the next point. Okay. Diving in a little more detail on the profits, this is how it's changed over time. AES Indiana's authorized net operating income, which is one metric for measuring profitability, would increase 77% from what was authorized in 2024 to what they're now proposing it would be by 2027. We've highlighted here what regulators have approved in the past in 2016, in 2018, in the 2024 rate case. We see the revenue increase. They got $29 million, then they got 44, then they got an extra $71 million, and now they're requesting even bigger ones, $85 million in 2026, up to another $108 million in 2027, and associated much higher profitability metrics as well.
Are you taking questions?
Let's do, if you have a clarifying question right now, we could do it, and then for general questions, let's hold off to the end, okay? All right. So AES Indiana has had some significant problems over the past year and a half, right? One of the biggest ones has been their rollout of a new billing and customer information system. This has led to many customers getting wrong bills, getting no bills, or even having if they signed up for the auto withdrawal, in other words, for your bank account to automatically be charged for your utility bill each month, AES's system accidentally charged some customers multiple times for the same bill. Some customers got charged 10 times for one bill. And so can you imagine checking your banking account and seeing 10 charges for your utility bill when it should only have happened one time? That's obviously a huge problem, especially for folks that might have gotten an overdraft fee, or that were relying on that money to pay their rent, or that had other crises happen as a result of not having access to that money because AES took it from them out of their bank account when it wasn't supposed to. So we have huge concerns. This is not a simple billing system. This was an $84 million billing system. And somehow it still led to these major problems that took months and months and months and months to finally fix. And you know what? Even after they said they fixed it, more problems keep popping up. So we still have concerns about this that we're going to be investigating in this case. That's not the only issue. We've had some major storms and reliability challenges here in Indianapolis as well over the past year or two. Severe storms are a part of this rate case too. They're one of the factors that is driving rates higher because AES wants to now recover some of those storm costs. But one of the problems we found when we dug into the data is that we saw that AES is now taking almost 3.5 times longer to reconnect you after a major storm. So that doesn't sound like AES Indiana is maybe doing enough to connect us back to the grid when there is an outage, when there is a major storm. We also see near tripling of the tree trimming or vegetation management expenses of the utility. Back in 2022, they were authorized $15 million a year to do this tree trimming work. In 2024, they got a really big increase in the last case. They came to us and said, you know what, this is really important for reliability. We need to bump it up to $25 million. We're going to do it more often. Don't worry, this is going to help with our reliability. Guess what? Now they're coming back asking for $43 million a year. Near tripling in 5 years. And guess what? You'd think with $43 million, they'd be able to trim these lines more, improve our reliability. That's not the case. They're requesting, in this case, to reduce the amount of lines they're going to trim each year. So, huge increase in money, less tree trimming as a result. How does that map out? We're going to be looking at that close. Okay. And speaking of our transmission and distribution system, which you might just generally call the grid, spending on the grid has skyrocketed. AES Indiana is spending money hand over fist, both on operations and maintenance, the annual costs of just upkeeping their transmission and distribution system, but also when it comes to capital investment, spending money on new investment. We see in the bottom right figure here, highlighted in red, is those transmission and distribution investments that AES Indiana has been able to do because of a special law passed by the General Assembly called the TDSIC law, which is quite an acronym. It stands for the Transmission, Distribution, and Storage System Improvement Charge. I'm not going to try and say that again. It's a surcharge that allows AES Indiana to propose a very expensive plan on capital and operating maintenance costs having to do with grid upgrades. And as a result of those plans that get approved by the regulators, who have very limited discretion to say no to those plans, AES Indiana is allowed to then add a surcharge on our bill that recovers these costs. And in red, we see the spending under that specific tracker authorized by the General Assembly. When we look at it, we see the spending on this capital investment on our transmission and distribution system has quadrupled in the recent years. In that we see the operating and maintenance expenses have doubled compared to prior years. You look at 2022 to 2024, and you go back and compare it to prior years before that, you see a major increase in spending. So these are factors driving our rates higher. I also wanted to throw in executive compensation for AES Corporation, as well as AES Indiana, is quite significant. We're talking millions of dollars a year to their executives. We don't begrudge folks earning a fair payday, but we do have concerns about such high paydays for their executives, particularly when we see it be much, much higher than our government officials, including the governor of Indiana, whose payday is closer to $220,000 a year. So should ratepayers be paying the full cost of executive salaries, executive compensation packages, or should AES Indiana and AES Corporation shareholders be forced to pay some of that tax? That's another question we want to ask in this rate case. Make sure that we're not paying exorbitant fees to pay for a millionaire salary.
That's what we're doing.
Okay. Wanted to note the data center issue because that is becoming a major driver of rate increases across Indiana and indeed across the country. We're not alone here in Indianapolis. We have 2 data center proposals, one down in Franklin Township that's been identified as Google as the developer, and another data center in Morgan County. Both of these could be AES Indiana customers, and if they became customers of AES Indiana, we're really concerned about the potential impacts to folks like you and me, because this would require a tremendous amount of investment in new generating facilities, power plants, because these data centers use enormous quantities of power. In fact, some data centers that we've seen being proposed or even starting to be constructed here in Indiana could use as much electricity as the entire city of Indianapolis combined. So these are very, very large users beyond anything else we've ever seen before. And that will require a tremendous amount of spending by the utility in order to serve them. We have a lot of concerns that those costs could wind up in our bills. AES Indiana does not have any consumer protections in place to ensure that these data centers that could come to our area does not negatively impact our reliability, our affordability, or our environmental sustainability. Indeed, AES Indiana has already put out a request for proposal to ask developers to, hey, how much would it cost for you to build giant new natural gas-fired power plants in order to be able to serve some of these data center loads? So we have a lot of concerns, not just about the cost, which is enormous. Natural gas power plants are more than twice as expensive today as they were just 3 years ago as a result of the demand from data centers. But we also have concern about the environmental sustainability. That would be a huge increase in fossil fuel generation here in our city. That would potentially be on the grid for 40 plus years. That could really undermine all our environmental sustainability goals. And we've actually been making some huge progress in Indianapolis in reducing our emissions over time. So this could really set us back and take us a step backwards. AES is also considering a sale. So I just wanted to note this. This was reported by Bloomberg. They're looking at options to potentially sell our utility to private equity, an entity like BlackRock or Brookfield. AES Corporation has been struggling in terms of, you can see their stock has not been performing well over time. They've had years where they've not been able to make a profit. They're highly leveraged, and so some of these factors are coming into play with considering a sale. We want to make sure such a sale would not negatively impact folks here in Indy. We know that some of these potential buyers could have motives that could run counter to what our motives are in terms of trying to push the utility to make even more profit off of our backs, to reduce their operating and maintenance expenses, reducing the quality of our service, concerned about the consolidation of market power into the hands of fewer and fewer entities, and transparency and accountability concerns when you have a large entity like this being acquired by private equity or a similarly situated entity. And of course, environmental sustainability. Such a company might not, such an entity buying our utility might not have the same goals we do as a city to protect our health, protect our public environmental quality in the city. So we want to make sure that those factors are also taken into consideration. Okay, with that, let me turn it over to my colleague Kelly to talk about now how we can get involved as ratepayers here in the city, how we can make our voices heard and stand up against this exorbitant rate increase.
Ooh, thank you, Ben. I think we have plenty of motivation at this point, and so now we just need to talk about what to do with it, okay? And before we dive in, we need to get to know the Indiana Utility Regulatory Commission, or IURC. Both Kerwin and Ben have mentioned the IURC. This is the state agency that will make the final decision in this AES rate increase. And important to know that there are 5 commissioners, and all of them are appointed by the governor, which means we pay the price for their decisions, but we don't have a way to hold them accountable. And that's why it's really important that during the rate increase, you make your voice heard by submitting written comments, as we'll discuss, showing up at the public field hearings, because this is your chance to speak directly to these regulators, okay? And I think it's important that we all keep it in mind that the regulators can say, sure, AES, you get everything asked for. Or they can say, no way, you do not. Or they can modify what AES has proposed. So there's a fight ahead of us, and it's important that we know we've got a chance to push back. Okay. We also want to get to know some of the other groups that intervene in the rate increase. And there's another government agency called the Office of Utility Consumer Counselor, or OUCC. And what they do is they intervene on behalf of all utility customers in Indiana. And so as Ben mentioned earlier, remember the slide where there's going to be lower rate increases potentially for the big industrial customers, and we, the little residential folks, would pay a bigger increase. Well, the OUCC represents everybody, okay? So they're not just looking out for residential customers, they're also looking out for the big customers too. The other thing is that the head of their agency that you can see there, he's also appointed by the governor, not accountable to us. But what you need to know is that when you submit written comments or you show up and you speak out at the field hearings, what the OUCC does is they take those comments and they submit them as evidence in the case. And that's why we're working really hard to get everybody and their brother and their sister and their friends to submit written comments, because the more folks that speak out, the better, okay? But the OUCC is not the only group that intervenes. The big industrial customers that you can see listed there, they team up, they get a lawyer, they advocate for what they want in the rate increase. And then Kroger and Walmart, big commercial customers, lawyer up and advocate for themselves in the rate increase. The city of Indianapolis has also intervened because things like streetlights are very important to the city. And then of course, us here at Citizens Action Coalition. And we're the only intervener that's just looking out for residential customers. And we've got an amazing lawyer, as Kerwin mentioned. Where is she? Jen, we love you. She goes toe to toe with teams of lawyers for these big companies. And we've got Ben, who does expert testimony for us, and Reagan, our legal assistant. So we work really hard. We're fighting for you throughout the whole rate case process. And yeah, it's kind of David versus Goliath, but we don't give up. And we haven't given up for 51 years. So here we go. It is important to know that rate case processes are fairly lengthy. Okay, we've got a lot of steps to this whole thing. We're earlier in the process. AES filed in June. Here we are at our town hall. We got a couple of public field hearings coming up and very soon. And we'll have 2 more after these 2. We just don't know the dates yet. But there's deadlines for public comments, and then there's a deadline for the utility regulators to announce their decision, and that's the end of March. So it'll be a while before we know how much AES can raise bills, or whether we've completely defeated them from raising bills at all. We'll see. Let's just, hope for that. Okay, so what you can do is submit written comments, and we know life is busy. We know you're constantly bombarded with information, so what we do is try to make it really easy for you to make your voice heard. And you can do it right now by scanning that code. There's also little flyers on your tables with the same code. And what that does is it takes you to sort of a form email template that we set up that'll submit your comments in this case. And we go through and we say, hey, folks, please lower AES's profits. Or at least don't give them 10.7%. We lost food when our power was out. We're having a hard time keeping up with all these increases, and we don't think your CEO should be making that much money. We don't get that into detail, but we have forms that take some of the important info from this case, but you're able to modify it because your story needs to be heard by regulators, because they're hearing from AES, and they are hearing from the big industrial customers, and they need to hear from you, okay? So please take action, and anything and everything you can do to help spread that link to your networks, we sincerely appreciate, because the more folks that speak out, the better. We also make it really easy to kind of collect a lot of information about the rate increase on our website. We've got a detailed web page. And again, on our website, Kerwin opened with this, you can sign up for emails and texts, because right now we're needing you to take action about this rate increase. But come January, when our legislators get back into session, we're probably going to need you to contact them too. And then again, the last time AES filed a rate increase was 2 summers ago. So we're gonna need your voice again, and we do work hard to not bombard you with information, but we will email you and text you when it's important that you make your voice heard. And then of course, we also need folks to show up and speak out at the public field hearings. And we're gonna give a little bit of props here to the center picture. Do you see all those people in there? That is Evansville, Indiana. And those folks showed up at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. There were supposed to be 2 field hearings, 2 and 6. So many folks showed up at 2 that they bled into the 6 o'clock hearing and didn't stop till nearly 11, if I'm not mistaken.
11 o'clock, yeah, I got kicked out because the place had to close.
Beautiful sight to behold. I mean, heartbreaking because folks can't pay their bills in Evansville because their bills have been so high. But it was a really powerful showing of their community. The first person that testified was their mayor, Mayor Stephanie Terry. And she got up there and she said, our community cannot afford this. And she was followed up by city councilors and county officials who said our community cannot afford that. And it was Democrats and it was Republicans coming together and saying, we cannot afford this.
Well, Kelly, the second speaker was her Republican opponent, who she beat in the election. So the Democrat who won was first, the Republican who lost was second, and they both said the same thing. What's that?
What was the result?
What's that?
Of the
What
high.
the rate increase?
Well, there was a settlement, actually, recent rate increase that we did not join, that the OECC did not join, that we opposed, that the commission did approve that settlement, unfortunately, but in the settlement, they did acknowledge that field hearing and made some downward adjustments. So Centerpoint got less than they otherwise would have because of that field hearing.
Yep. So it does make a difference. And we didn't get to this point of high bills overnight, right? We've seen a lot of laws passed. We've seen a lot of corporate business going on. So it's going to take concerted effort over time to continue pushing back. But I will say other field hearings, you know, the utilities have been busy. It's not just AES. Duke filed a big old increase. They had a couple of their state legislators show up at a field hearing in Bloomington. In northern Indiana for NIPSCO, we had school superintendents come out and say, we have done every single thing that we can think of to do to save money on bills so we can put more money into the classroom, and our NIPSCO bills just keep on going up. And so the more voices that we can have at these field hearings explaining the lengths that people are going to afford their bills, the better off we'll be, because regulators, again, need to hear that. And we do know the first one is coming up, not this coming Monday, right, but the Monday after, and then the Thursday after. So the first field hearing is going to be down on the south side. The second one's going to be in Fountain Square at Southeast Community Services on Shelby. And then we know there's going to be 2 more, but we don't know the dates and times and locations for those yet. So as soon as we know when those field hearings will be, we'll let you know. And again, we appreciate any and all help that you can give in spreading the word, because the more folks that show up, the better. I think I might sound like a broken record. A couple things to keep in mind real quick, and then we're getting to questions. I think some folks it can be intimidating to speak out at the public field hearings. You're talking straight to regulators, and if a lot of folks show up, you've got a big crowd behind you. So it does help to prepare before going. And we'll get to this in a second. We've got templates that you can use for that as well. If you can show up a little bit early, which I know is tough, if you're coming from work, if you are using public transportation, but the earlier you can get there to sign in, the better. Folks who do testify in person got to be sworn in. So do be prepared for that. They usually do it as a group. And then when you are called up to speak, you've got to state your name and spell it, since it's official. And then you'll be prepared to speak your mind to state utility regulators. And if you need a friendly face, Jen is usually up front as well as an intervener, so just look at Jen. Okay, the last thing before we get to the questions. I'm going to ask that when we get there, you raise your hand so that I can call on you so that we can just make a concerted effort to get to everybody that we can. But we're going to make another plug for our website, because if you scan this code, you'll go to our AES rate hike webpage where we've got a lot of good information. But the other thing you can do online on our website is give a contribution. And it does only take a little bit from a lot of people for us to keep fighting. And we appreciate so much every single contribution that people give. So thank you to our members who are here today. We can't do what we do without you. But we'll have all the other resources that you need for this rate hike on that webpage, the field hearings, this presentation, a recording of this presentation, the webinar we did, we've got a recording on that, and of course the templates that you can use if you want to speak out in person to collect your thoughts for testifying at the field hearings. We've also got our one-click action, the form templates for the emails, and then last but not least, the final plug to sign up for emails and texts, okay? So with that, I think we'll dive in with some questions unless we've forgotten something glaring. Kerwin was smiling, so I didn't know if I forgot something.
Your turn,
Okay.
Kelly, take it away.
Yay, okay. I think we'll start with you.
I don't want to take up all the questions, so so if I understood the slides in the beginning, there was a rate increase, there was a rate case in 2024, right?
That was when it was decided, yep.
That was decided.
That was the year it was decided, yep.
Right. What was the result from their proposal to the end of the rate increase?
Yeah, that case, we were able to reach a settlement that significantly reduced their asking price. I can't remember the details off the top of my head, but it was a significant reduction from what they came in proposing.
Gotcha. Okay.
And it included some additional consumer protections as part of it.
Okay. And then now they're coming back in 2025 for another one that will effectively change the rates for 26 and 27.
That's right.
Right?
Yep.
So they don't have to come back in 26 or 27 for another rate increase, but they can do these interim cases, which are for what?
Yeah, so those interim cases of the bill trackers or surcharges are for narrowly defined sets of costs.
Project costs.
Yep, so there's different ones they have in place that have been approved by the commission or by the General Assembly. So one is like a fuel adjustment. So if their fuel gets really expensive, they can pass on the extra cost to us.
That's what I thought.
One is
So
for the transmission
why are they
distribution.
Okay, so why they double dip? Because
Yeah.
here's what I understand we did. If the cost of natural gas goes up, they can go back and do a interim case to pay for the increase in natural gas costs. But you had on your slide that one of the parts of their rate increase on this one was the increased cost of natural gas. Am I correct?
That's right. So
Okay.
part of what happens is they estimate what do they think the cost of fuel is going to be over the next few years. And they're going to build that cost into our rates. And then those bill trackers or surcharges are just to either charge us what they got wrong, the extra, or they credit it back to us if they charge us too much.
Can I add to that? In rates, and correct me if I'm wrong, there's a certain level of base fuel costs
Right.
built into rates.
That's what I thought.
And then they have the fuel adjustment clause every 90 days.
So do they actually give money back if the?
Sometimes rates do go down. You'll
Yeah.
notice from, I think it
Okay,
was 22 to 23, rates actually came down. Rates came down, bills came down in large part because gas prices came down.
okay. I just wanted to make sure of that. And then let me make sure I understand, because I thought that we had legislation that said tree trimming, TSDIC upgrades were actually those interim cases. They could come back in the interim, and then they had to show us what they cost.
Correct. The TDSIC bills from 2013 and 2019 gave them the ability to file 5 to 7 year T&D plans at the commission and recover 80% of the costs through the bill tracker,
Right.
and they have to defer 20% of those costs to collect in a rate case.
Right.
So in part, they're motivated to file a rate case because folks remember 2020, AES was approved for $1.2 billion in T&D costs. Despite Ben showing the metrics getting worse, outage times increased despite the spending. So, but they can collect through that rider 80% of whatever the plan costs are until they file a rate case. Then they can collect the other 20%, and as Ben pointed out, what they're collecting through the tracker gets rolled into base rates and comes out of the tracker. But they still keep filing TDSIC, and so those trackers will build up over time.
And these hearings, my last question, these hearings are at the IURC, right?
The evidentiary hearings at the IURC, the field hearings
Right.
are one on the south side, one on the southeast side, and I'll have 2 on the north side.
The evidentiary hearings for the public, they're supposed to provide this information to everybody in the public. Am I correct? AES would have to say, okay, if somebody were to ask, if I were to send a letter and say, when the evidentiary hearing is done, I want to know what your CEO made in 2020. And what, well, no, I want you to know. But I want them to have to provide that information in the evidentiary. I think, from my perspective as a legislator, I get access to information that some of you may not get. I want you to have that information at the evidentiary hearing. What I've seen at those evidentiary hearings is you've done a great lawyer. I see her. Okay.
Jen, would you like to join us? But she's our secret weapon. Nobody knows she's here.
Well, for me, because I'm an attorney, I know what most attorneys, good attorneys, know the answer to the question before they ask it, right?
Sure.
So we should have that information prior to the evidentiary hearing and make them actually provide that to the board.
We agree. What they do when they file a rate case is they file thousands and thousands and thousands of pages, and this is precisely why we do this, because they don't do that.
But can we, as members of the General Assembly, could you provide us with questions that we could provide to the board to say, these are the things we want to see as evidence in the hearing?
Sure. I mean, that's what, yeah, and that's what, the TDSIC law was also the bill that changed the timeline for rate cases.
Right.
And the parameters for rate cases. So absolutely. The commission will tell you they are a creature of statute, empowered and emboldened by the authority granted them by the legislature.
And they're nonpartisan.
Correct. So y'all can pass whatever you want that says, when a utility files a case, we want this. Yeah.
And they make $186,000 a year. And their budget for the state is $13 million, is what we pay for the IURC, by the way. Just so you all know. And some of them, there's one guy that was appointed by Evan Bayh. You guys remember him? He's still on the IURC, by the way.
He may be the longest.
There are no term limits for IURC.
He was the second longest serving nationwide. He may be the first now.
Right.
Maybe
I just
the
want
longest.
everybody to know the facts about the IURC. There are 5 individuals appointed by the governor, supposed to be nonpartisan. Some of them work for LSA, a couple of them did. We know what their political background is. We know where they come from. They make $186,000 a year, and you, taxpayers, pay for their office to the tune of $13.9 million.
We're also one of only 3 states where those that regulate the investor-owned utilities are not either directly elected by the public or confirmed through an up or down vote by one or both chambers of the General Assembly. Nevada, New Hampshire, Indiana, we have those that regulate the investor-owned utilities effectively unaccountable to the public. And as Ben pointed out, no, Kelly, our consumer advocate, the public, the advocate that represents the public, serves at the will and pleasure of the governor. Go ahead, you had a question. Somebody raise their hand.
I did.
Oh, Kelly, you're in charge of that.
Yeah, this is my
Sorry, John.
Yeah.
No problem. Two things, as a legislator, I'm used to amendments, okay? So, one, we have a lot of power outages, and that's damaging for the people in my district or senior citizens who have to have medication that's refrigerated, and sometimes they make the decision, do I buy food, do I buy medicine? So if you buy your food and your medicine has to be refrigerated, you lost both. Insurance only comes by one time, so that's that medicine's out of pocket. So, if they want a rate increase, can we ask them to put an insurance on all of our consumers, so if there's a power outage, their insurance will replace their food and medicine? One amendment. My second amendment is, they get $43 million for tree trimming. Can we transfer that tree trimming into burying the cable so that we don't have those power outages?
Those are both really good questions, and I'm gonna loop in Kerwin.
Well, I would say public, we would need public policy to govern things like paying people for spoiled food and that sort of thing. That would have to be directed from the General Assembly. Burying power lines is extraordinarily expensive. I don't think anybody's opposed to the idea of burying power lines. The rate impact on customers would be extraordinary. And so the challenge with burying power lines is just that. That would have to be something, in my opinion,
Okay.
that would have to be supported with federal taxpayer money.
So-
The ratepayers simply could not bear the costs of burying those power lines. So there would have to be some sort of state level or federal level incentives to help offset those costs.
So, 43 million, okay, plus the fact they bring in electricians from out of state when there's a power outage,
Yep.
when power goes down.
Yep.
They're paying their workers overtime. When you factor all that in, burying the cable may be cheaper.
Sure, that's something to look at, yeah.
Well, and to your first point, I do just want to mention, we had a lady call our office who suffered an outage from Duke Energy for a few days, lost all the food in her fridge. She has never filed a homeowner's insurance claim. She did for that food, and they kicked her off after being with her insurance company for years. So you're hitting at something really important, because people lose a lot, and folks are put in really dangerous positions when it's insulin and other things that they need to keep refrigerated. Yeah.
Also, man, I know there's other questions, so real quick, to add on that, the other thing that's outrageous, as Ben talked about their billing system.
Oh, yeah.
We had multiple folks call this office who were billed 10 times on the same day for their utility bill. One of them happened to be a friend of my daughter who teaches at Warren Central, who, guess what? Couldn't make her mortgage payment. Couldn't make her mortgage payment because of those deductions. Did AES give her money back? No. Did the commission tell AES to give them her money back? No. Why? Why are utility companies allowed to immediately, that's theft, immediately take 10 payments out of your bank account immediately and are not required to give it back to you as quickly as they took it?
Yep.
It's simply outrageous. Many of those folks could afford it. So AES just applied a credit to their bill, not a big deal, they could afford it. But many of the folks, guess what? Could not. They couldn't pay their rent, couldn't make their mortgage payment, couldn't make their car payment, couldn't buy groceries. And did the commission, did the regulators, did the General Assembly, did anybody say, hey, if you took that money illegally, give it back to them as quickly as you took it? No, but that would have to be something that would have to be legislated in terms of policy.
Kerwin? I mean, hopefully they got their money back.
My friend's daughter only, or my daughter's friend, only got her money back because she filed a complaint with the bank, disputed the charges, got her money back in 6 weeks, but it was because her bank disputed the charges with AES.
Yeah.
Not anything to do with the IURC or anything else. But that still took 6 weeks.
And as we say on our website, they have the gall to ask for higher profits now.
Anyway,
Yes.
apologies, there's other questions,
We
so
do.
sorry, go ahead.
So this question has to do with what the negative number that was up there, saying that they had lost $248 million in revenue, the company AES. You said that they were considered themselves to have lost that money, is that correct?
I believe I was referring to certain years where AES Corporation, did not have a profit. They were losing money for that year.
So is this a poorly run company or?
Yes.
Yeah, so I
It's a great question.
understand that there may be environmental ramifications on storms, that it costs a lot of money to do that.
Yeah.
That we need more infrastructure to support things like 5G, right? That's probably something, although maybe AT&T pays for that, I don't know. But still, it's electricity. So why did they lose that money? How come they can't, I mean, with this much revenue, where did the money go? Who got it?
Well, AES Corporation is a very large multinational corporation
Right.
that has other utility companies,
Right.
other subdivisions that, run power plants and stuff all over the world.
Okay,
So there's lots of other sources of spending and revenues that they're getting. And so for certain years, some of those businesses were not profitable. We're losing them lots of money, even though AES Indiana was churning out money for them.
They just divest our money away
the numbers
to
on
other
it.
places.
I see.
So AES Indiana has been making money, has been making profit. The larger corporation has. No, it's
So the part that I'm kind of feeling helpless, hopeless, is hearing that the IURC shall accept. And I think, it's hard in the sense of I'm going into this knowing that there will be a rate increase regardless of how many people showed up. That example in Evansville, they filled the room, they went into overtime, still didn't get what they were asking for. So because of these increases, my brain has been going into like, how can you live in the urban environment and have like an off-grid lifestyle because it's getting more and more unaffordable. Knowing that it's inevitable, they will probably settle on lowering whatever it is that they were asking for. Is there something where the coalition will divert and say, we are going to start looking into saying screw AES altogether, and is there a way that we can come together in the neighborhoods and communities, helping each other to create our own type of energy that we've seen in, I've just started diving into this and it sounds absurd, but when you see communities in Italy, in Australia, in New Zealand that are also going through this type of monopolization of utility bills that are coming together and saying, we're going to create our own system. I recently learned that Indiana made that illegal for people to come together and actually go off-grid and tie into, but is there a way to be a renegade and say, yeah, we're going to do it anyway, and resources to start that fire, to start that conversation?
Well, we have to change the law.
Yeah.
I mean, the Electrical Services Territory Act from the early 1980s, the General Assembly granted exclusive service territories to all of the utilities in the state of Indiana. Not only did they grant exclusive service territories, they prohibited any municipality from forming, if you were not a municipal utility at the time of the act in, what was it, Jen, 82, 83, somewhere around there? If you were not a municipal utility at the time of the Electrical Services Territory Act, it is illegal in the state of Indiana to form a municipal electric utility unless you were in place at the time of the Electrical Services Territory Act. Furthermore, I talked about repealing of laws, especially net metering and energizing in Indiana and so forth. Not only do they have solid state franchised monopolies that nobody can budge without changing the law, they continue to make it more expensive, more difficult, more barriers to putting solar on your roof, putting solar on your property, putting wind on your farm. They do everything they can to not only protect their monopoly service territory, but from our perspective, expand their monopoly service territory by taking control and choice away from consumers. And I see my friend Zach Schultz there with Solar United Neighbors, who would certainly love to talk to anybody about, going solar in Indiana and the difficulties of going solar in Indiana. But they have done everything they can, the monopoly utilities through the legislature, to protect those service territories, and then they just continue year after year after year to whittle away at things like customer choice and those sort of things. And that's why we have to just continue doing what we're doing and continuing to fight. But yeah, I don't know. I know that's not the answer you necessarily want.
Well, none of it.
But I think what we're seeing is energy and utility and affordability issues, the media attention, the coverage, the public outcry is at levels that I've never seen in my 20 years at CAC. And so hopefully, from our perspective, people continue to build and momentum continues to build and they hear more and more, and we can start chipping away at those bad policies and making some real, meaningful, impactful change, because something's got to give.
And I have one other thing to tack on that, Mr. Apologies. I have watched your live social media interview where you had mentioned that these people are whining and being wined and dined. They're going
Sure.
to the Pacers games
Yep.
and the Colts game. Is that part of anyone's argument where we can expose? Because obviously this, I mean, it's across the nation, across the globe, globalization in general has just created this corporate greed where it's just so in our face and it's laughable to the higher ups, top down. Is that something where we're going to expose anybody amongst the IURC to say, who you're rubbing elbows with? Essentially, you're being watched by the public. We are watching you. We know that this is done to put, like, you've been sold, bought, and paid for. Someone's in your pocket.
Well, I mean, we track campaign contributions on our website. We've been tracking them since 2008. You can go to our website, General Assembly page. You can click all legislatures. You can see their money and their gifts from the energy and the utility industry. It's supposed to be illegal for regulators to be talking to those folks, but as we know from the Edwardsport scandal back in the early 2010s, that happens on a regular basis. So yes, I mean, yes, we're all aware of campaign contributions, but it goes beyond campaign contributions from my perspective. When you go to the third floor of the Indiana General Assembly and see all the lobbyists, it is extraordinary the amount of utility representation before the General Assembly. So it's not just the campaign contributions. You said you see my recordings because I love to tell people it's also the attention that the utility companies give lawmakers makes them feel special. They feed them, they take them to Pacer games, Colt game. What do they like? They know who likes ballet, who likes football, who likes rugby. They feed them, they whine, and like former Senator Mike Delph said, who refused to do that sort of stuff, he goes, I could have a lawmaker take me to breakfast, lunch, and dinner 365 days a year if I wanted to. So it's not just the money, it's also the attention that they make people feel special and important and valued. Not only that, they are all over our communities. They have community liaisons all over the counties and the cities and city halls. And they're very, very good at what they do. And they have everybody believing that they are just the best corporate partner in the world, creating jobs, keeping the lights on, taking care of everything, whatever. They're very, very good at that. And the impact of that has been unaffordability for the average everyday. So something has to give.
And do not despair. I can understand. I despair a lot. But then we got to pick ourselves back up, because the thing is, folks all across Indiana are coming together and saying the same thing, which is this greed has got to stop. And so I firmly believe that if we keep pushing and we keep going forward, we're going to get somewhere.
This woman had her hand up for about
Okay.
10 minutes.
Okay. Awesome. Thank you, Lindsay. And Lindsay did just remind me that some of this is great to put in a letter to the editor, and we're happy to support anyone and everyone who would like to do that. Okay? Everyone who has a question, please raise your hand, because I want to get an eyeball. We got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. You first, and we're gonna get her done. Thank you all for your patience.
Okay, so my question is this right here. So we have to pay, I don't care if you pay on the phone, I don't care if you pay on the computer, I don't care if you go to kiosk. You have to pay $2 each time that you have to I don't believe in having to pay a bill. That's stupid. Right? So when I figured it out and everything else like that, that is $1 million every time you go. For the 530 people, I put it at 500,000 is $1 million every time they're getting $1 million a month. Right? So I think that number one, they should find a way to do away with it. As far as their CEOs and everything else like that, it is beyond me that your salary is 1.2 million, your bonus is 2.4 million, your stock rewards are 9.3 million, and your other compensations are 325,000. I want to know what you're getting compensated for. Number one. You know what I'm saying? It doesn't make any sense that they have all this money. I would tell everybody, to be honest with you, I would tell everybody that has auto pay with any utility company, stop it. Stop it. Because it's not doing any sense. I have my bills right here. Last month my bill was $82.32. I know that's extremely low, but you know. Okay? So I looked at my bill, and my bill for me to pay for July, whatever, was $155.22. So, wait a minute, it gets better. So, my bill went up a difference of $73, right? I really don't think that they're looking at these meters. I think that they're guesstimating. So, that's another thing. I think that back in the day, we used to have people that actually came out and looked at the meter.
Well, you got smart meters now. They don't come out. and
Well,
read
they
it.
better do something, because they're guesstimating. Okay? Because it's sitting up there saying with the exact same average of what it was last year, which the average was 84 degrees. The average was 84 degrees when this bill came out. So they're telling me that I use more. This how I know they on some BS, right? It's because you're telling me that I use 200 kWh more than I did last year. It was the exact same average, the exact same everything. Okay, I do not change my air. I ain't hardly even there. I have to sit up there. I'm trying to keep up with all this. So, another thing. Okay, so the new president, Brandy Davis Handy, she's a new president, and this is killer. She sat up there and said that, well, she makes about 20 times more than the average AES person. Okay, what is that? I just think that there has to be, it's too much, because on top of everybody, and this is making me so upset, on top of everything that everybody's going through, and they're losing everything that they have, their Medicaid, their Medicare, their food stamps, they're losing everything, Section 8, they're losing everything. And for you to ask, to sit up there and be so grieved, to ask for this money, and what happens is, this is what happens, listen to what I'm saying. When you have people who are desperate, they will resort to any measure. Anybody's going to resort to any measure to feed their kids. Any person is going to resort to any measure to sit up there and keep their lights on. You understand what I'm saying? You have to sit up there and people, they don't care anymore. And that's why people are starting to feel the way that they do.
That undermines the whole community. When
Yes.
they can't afford our basic survival.
Basic, and you're taking everything away. So when you do that, like I said, oh yeah, they was just bragging about how crime is going down. Well, guess what? It's about to come right back up. Because people do not have a way to take care of themselves, buy their medicines, like he was saying. They don't have a way to feed their kids, and when people get desperate, they're going to do what it takes to do what they got to do. So you all better be prepared. Woo, I'm sorry, I got heated.
No, it's all, that's what it makes.
I'm sorry.
That's why this rate case in particular we find so egregious, because bills were already, as Ben showed, bills were already going to go up 17% without this filing. Your bill was already going to increase nearly 17% without filing this rate case. And somehow AES felt the need to ask for more, and it's just gross. We got more questions, Kelly.
Yeah, and just what you just said, please show up to the field.
Oh, I got you. I got you.
Yes.
I mean, going off that, I would rather get held up at gunpoint, because at least that guy might be taking my money to pay his bills. I I've got a concern and then I've got a question. So my concern comes from the fact that I'm a teacher and, you know, this Google data center, there's maybe a Meta one out there. You know, it's not just the environmental impact which has been touched on, but also, I mean, they are going after millions of jobs. There are millions of jobs that could be destroyed by AI. And Google, with Google Classroom, could, I mean, they're looking at taking out tons of teachers. So I don't want to pay to allow this data center to exist to then take my job away. That's outrageous. My question though, so you said earlier in the presentation that the rate of increase, like there wouldn't need to be a rate increase if the return on equity was simply reduced to 5%. Now, I've never gotten a 5% raise as a teacher. It doesn't happen. Most of my friends and coworkers at best get a, you know, adjustment for inflation, which doesn't ever adjust for inflation. So my question is, how much money would AES be putting back in our pockets if the return on equity kept up with inflation and was 2% instead of 10%?
That's a great question. Thank you very much for being a teacher, by the way. We appreciate that a lot. Totally agree on the data center issue. We'll really have a lot of concerns that include that issue about AI and how it can undermine our jobs and undermine communities in many different ways. So it's not just the environmental or affordability concerns. It's totally area. And I lost my thread on your second point. I'm sorry.
Yeah, so like, and I know you probably have
it would be much, yeah, much less, I would say. It's hard to say specifically, but yeah, I mean, it really goes to show you how much the greed is here. There's never enough, right? They always want more, and then they'll come back for more, and then they'll come back for more.
Right now.
Just a comment on the billing, Ken. There should be a 10% or 7% for the state, because they charge you sales tax on that too.
Yes, the bill.
You didn't show that in the slide, but
The bill impact does include the sales tax. I did add that 7%.
Sales tax is on top of everything after all the years.
Hold on, say that again?
There's sales tax on top of all the fees.
In the state of
7%
in the state of Indiana, we all pay.
So the state of Indiana's gonna get tons of money out of this rate increase if it goes through.
But guess who doesn't have to pay sales tax on their utility bill? Data centers.
Yeah, I was gonna say, yeah, in the state of Indiana, we all pay.
Won't have to pay sales tax for that.
For 50 years.
Did you, wait, hold on a second. I didn't know that. I guess I should talk to, so you're saying on your tax bill,
On your
on your electric bill, there's a sales tax?
Yes, sir, 7%.
You have a bill, right?
Unless you're a data center.
Here, I can show you.
And those data centers are getting, they don't have to pay that 7%, which adds up a lot for a data center, because we learned recently that a large data center could use $500 million every year in electricity from a utility. 7% of that adds up. That's over $30 million a year. That's $1.7 billion in sales tax exemption
So they call it
for
a
one
state
data
tax,
center
it's a sales
just on their electric utility bill. So we're talking billions of dollars in lost sales tax revenue just for these data center sales tax exemptions.
And they could require them to put solar panels or something on the building, just generate some of their own energy, but no, why do that when they can screw us instead? What I want to know is how I'm supposed to pay an extra $30 a month when I can't come up with the $500 a month they've been charging me. I've been without power since the end of May because once my car broke down, I couldn't pay the near $500,000 that they were charging me a month for my electric bill and pay my mortgage and fix my car so I could get to work and pay for anything.
Yeah, as Kelly just
We
said.
had an opportunity to bring down our rates.
That's what the commission needs to
They
hear.
grid out west, but God forbid we get some of our energy from windmills and bring down our utility rates. They killed it.
Yeah, that's outrageous.
So sorry, as Kerwin said, if you can make the field hearing, this is exactly what regulators need to hear. And the other reminder is that we have policy solutions to this issue that have died at the State House because the bills didn't get a hearing. So that's the other avenue that we could be doing to help protect people.
Well, one's gonna be mine.
Yeah.
This state tax You guys want to know what the number one source of income to the state of Indiana
The
is?
sales tax,
Sales tax.
right?
Ryan Dvorak introduces a bill every year, get rid of the sales tax.
It's sales tax. I was shocked. I mean, literally, I didn't learn that until like 3 years ago.
But we
The
love
number one
progressive
source
taxation.
of income for the state of Indiana is sales tax. And if you go downtown, by the way, and buy a Coke,
It's an extra 1%.
extra what?
It's like 1 or 2% more.
I wish. It's like 7. Because we gotta pay for Lucas Oil and all the other stuff down there. But the thing, I had no idea, so we're actually getting paid off this monopoly at the state. We're generating, and so we keep $2.5 billion in the checkbook and people can't pay their, okay.
Yes.
All right.
Right.
All right, I.
Yep.
Yeah. State.
Okay, you know, my question is, the whole sales tax thing, I totally forgot about that.
Yeah.
But you know what, why do consumers who consume less pay a higher amount per kilowatt than other people, like big corporations? Hey Google, we're basically gonna fucking pay them to pollute our...
Take our water.
Yeah, exactly, you know what I'm saying, right? We're not gonna pay taxes, we're gonna subsidize their rate with our rate. I don't understand why people who use less have to pay more.
We agree 100%.
I'm just so,
And-
this hurts right now, you know? But, I guess, you know, this other stuff, it's like they're gonna do it, they're gonna get away with it. They're gonna probably get a lower rate. What they're gonna do, it's gonna be the same thing, you know, smile, you know, and just take it. What would it take, you said municipalities can't own utility companies. You know, Indianapolis is still a citizen, I'm telling you for right time. But what would it take for AES customers to form a co-op and buy AES? They're for sale. What would it take?
I actually heard a comment though, like, I know we were talking about options, but have we thought about electric co-ops? If they're in the rural areas, have we thought about that? Have we thought about doing community solar power grids too? That's something that is not going to be a workaround.
Well,
It's
yeah.
a workaround for the electric grid. We can create a solar power grid, but we would have to get the community together to do that.
The community solar bills are bills that they're refusing to hear.
Yeah.
We've had community solar bills introduced 5 years in a row at the State House, and the committee chairs have refused to hear them.
Which chair,
We're with
which names are out there? Which Republicans are refusing?
Utility and Energy, Ed Soliday in the House, Eric Cook in the Senate.
Say that again?
Ed Soliday in the House, Eric Cook in the Senate.
They're not from Indianapolis.
Oh, boy, ain't from Indianapolis either.
You know, the thing is, they're gonna kill
Andreas,
Why don't we play, let's figure out their rules, they wanna promote this AES, you know, idea, with coal and frack gas, that's what we're stuck with. Why don't we figure out how as a co-op, AES customers, to buy their company? And then we could, you know, the rates that we pay will be lower. I think it's a deal. I don't know how to finance it, I'm sure it's bazillions of dollars, but why not? Why not? But you know what?
Well,
I wonder if there's a way to do it.
Well, Boulder, Colorado did it.
Why not?
I mean, there's one city that did do it, that grouped together, so there would be nothing stopping the city of Indianapolis collectively, collective force,
Accept the law.
demanding that change.
And accept the law. We're a strict man, you can't do.
But you have to change the law, that's the problem.
Change the law first.
That's illegal. I know, I understand. The state of Indiana has carved out AES service territory for only AES. It is illegal for somebody else in that service territory to provide electricity to somebody else. That's what we're saying.
I'm telling you, you had it up on the thing at the beginning of your presentation. AES is contemplating a sale.
Right.
What would it take for AES customers to buy AES?
Oh, that I don't know. I don't know.
How hard would that be?
That's fine on BlackRock's offering, I guess. I'm not sure.
So whoever went and was trying to.
Welcome, just straight up.
You know, I'm tired of that.
Yeah. No, I love your energy. Yes, these are the questions we need to be considering. The thing to keep in mind is that that's big AES. AES Corporation, that's global, and then AES Indy is separate. So it'd be a whole lot of money, is what I'm saying. So, but we just keep on pushing. And if you guys, okay, who all still has questions? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, I'm gonna go to you and then we'll move around. Okay.
So I don't really have a question so much as a comment that I just want to add some context to all this. So I work in the low income space, and I think it's very perfect that we're here in the offices of the Indiana Community Action Association. But I just want to remind everyone also just the absolute cruelty of the timing of this. So Kerwin, spoke at the beginning about the lack of state-funded programs, which is a real problem here. But this is also coming about just as the federal administration is launching an all-out attack on mining. We got some good news from the Senate Appropriations Committee. They appear to be combating that attempt, but we don't know what that's going to look like in the House. And I just want to remind everyone that the rationale for proposing the elimination of light heat was that energy prices were going to come down through American energy dominance. So I just want to remind everyone of that irony and just the absolute cruelty that's going on here.
And to your point, as Senator Taylor just pointed out, people can't pay their utility bills, there's no assistance program, and the state's got a $2.5 billion rainy day fund, making money for somebody. If it ain't raining, I don't know what
And
it
I'll
is.
find out what the state makes on the AES bills on a yearly basis for Indiana. I'll get that information.
Okay, who else on this side had a question? Yes.
Just for like a layman, what's a tracker and are they in every house and what's the angle behind like reducing the cost of the tracker fees?
So a tracker is a bill surcharge on your utility bill. And it covers a narrow set of costs that a utility might be making in between employees. So for example, we talked about cost of fuel could vary significantly for the utility. And they estimate what your fuel is going to be when they set their base rates, like in this rate case. And so it's kind of built into our case. But then when they actually go out and buy the fuel in a given month, it might be less than or greater than the actual cost that's in the rates. So they use the bill surcharge, the tracker, to recover that amount if it was too little, or give it back to us if they collected too much. They have other types of trackers or surcharges to cover other types of costs. So one of the other buckets of costs we talked about was the transmission and distribution costs, those grid upgrades, and the T-to-SIC bill. And we saw the slide that showed like the red bars and just how much of their transmission and distribution spending is now being recovered in these trackers. So we have concerns with trackers because it allows utilities to add all sorts of fees and surcharges in between rate cases to recover everything under the sun.
They don't have to go through this public hearing process.
Really quick cases, quarterly basis. So that, yeah, exactly. So it gives the utility their money quickly, which is what they want, and that's why they get the General Assembly to pass laws that allow them to add these trackers on those.
And the other problem with trackers, we fought trackers for years, we had a great track sheet. The trouble with trackers, it's still on our website. But one of the big issues with trackers is that, unlike a rate case, utility has to open up its books, the entirety of their books. We get to see where their costs have gone up, where their costs have gone down, interest rates change, etc. Trackers allow utility companies to go in and just charge you for the costs. They don't have to open their books. They can just add on cost after cost after cost. Ben mentioned the money in coal ash that ratepayers have to pay. I mentioned trackers. Guess why ratepayers have to pay for coal ash? Because in 2011, Indiana General Assembly passed Senate Enroll Act 251, which said ratepayers have to pay for any compliance costs, any regulation, anything. The federal government may levy on them, ratepayers pay. That's why.
So like lowering the tracking fees, them signaling that they really want to double down on this like strategy of just avoiding rate changes and just relying on tractors.
It also allows them to gold plate and spend more money.
Right.
There's no restrictions on how, it's opening the floodgates.
Are you referring to maybe the slide that showed the tracker going down
Yeah,
69%?
What's their
So
idea?
what's happening there in that specific case is that those costs being recovered in the trackers, in this rate case, they're saying, oh, we're gonna take that money that we're recovering in the trackers and we're gonna put it into our base rates. So that money didn't go anywhere, it's just coming from the tracker, from the bill surcharge, and it's now becoming part of our base rates.
They took too much.
Yeah, but
No,
No,
the
it's just
uncollected amount.
recovering it through the base rates as opposed to recovering it through the tracker.
Right,
It's just being collected somewhere else.
right. Instead of going with a tracker, they're putting it in the base rate.
So just like when you buy a concert ticket, you gotta pay a convenience fee, you gotta pay a service charge, you gotta pay a whatever else charge, all those little ticky-tacky things that add up, and you're like, how the heck did I spend that much on a concert ticket? That's kind of like those trackers that are just adding different sets of costs on it, and you're like, why am I paying for this?
Great question. I think we had one more question on this side. Am I correct with that? Anybody else on this side have a question? Nope, okay.
Yes. Question is, what can we do, or what have you guys done as far as the Citizen Action Coalition to reopen the shuttered doors of AES? I say that simply because as of fall of 2023, with the new system error failure, with the $84 million interface system that was installed, which really created this problem, okay? Because I had got a missed bill December. I got a bill in January. I paid January bill. I did not get another bill until February, which was $1,026. Which in fact, I went to my bank, I got all my itemized statements back to May of 2025. I mean, May of 2023 of that year, up to date. And I refused to pay that amount, only the monthly, each monthly payment that my billing statement indicated. I did not pay that charge. But what I did do, I did get an estimated $250 for that billing missed payment of December. So I requested by phone to come in and dispute.
No, you ain't going in there.
Okay, this is what I'm gonna do. Okay. We talked to one of the associates. Okay, well, let me check. I said, okay. I said, set up a date and call me. Okay, we'll call you. We done already, registered, your appointment. I mean, your time for your appointment. I never did get in to see them. So what I did, I went to CAD, Consumer Affairs Division, at the Indiana Regulatory Commission. Kendra Lanier, she was my investigator. I had all my data. Come back, when she had concluded with her investigation, she never looked at mine. She concluded with AES's manufactured, engineered data that everything was okay. So I appealed. I got a letter from the Indiana Regulatory Commission, and where I'm going with this is this. I think we need to move forward because at the end of the day, with my situation, they haven't shown me the $1,026 that I owed, which they did credit me the $250 that estimated. So they knocked that down to $922, and then they sent me a disconnect notice. So what I did, I went and got me a cashier's check. So I told the teller, I said, tell you what I want you to do. I said, I want you to mark on this check, which I got here, I can show it to you. The memo on this check was to install new equipment, system error failure, which was reported by any star. So what I'm saying is I'm letting you know I'm paying for the installation of your equipment, not for any kilowatt charges of my electric bill. So we need to take this and move forward with because they have not sat down with me, went over my records to see the dispute. They have not done that. So I think we need to move, I got all my data here. I think we need to move forward with that and find out with your commissioners. You can have all this information and you can take it with you.
Okay, we'll take a look.
Yeah.
This is great.
We're so sorry that happened, and I think a lot of people have not gone as far as you did, which was to file a complaint with the Consumer Affairs Division because they either don't know how, or it takes a lot of time to do that.
Yeah, it's
That's
a lot of
big
time.
burden on people.
Oh, yeah.
That's a
Yeah.
really big burden on people, okay.
Has
You had a
anybody ever
question.
realized, I used to be a union contract negotiator, when they take away the surcharge and they add it to the base rates, guess what? That increase applies to that increase in the base rates as well. They'll actually get more money than you think. Has anybody realized that? Because when I was a union negotiator, they took away our holiday pay, it put it in our base rate, and then we got a bigger increase because of that. That's one thing that you gotta watch out for. It's very sneaky on their part.
Very interesting. And
Secondly, I want to know, when I speak out of the meeting, is there any time limit, for example, on how long I can speak? Any limits on what I can say and cannot say? Because they're not going to like me when I get up there.
I mean, I think they will say, try to limit your comments to 3 or 4 minutes, try to not be
That's what I wanted
repetitive.
to find out.
But I can tell you, I've been to probably over 100, if not more, field hearings in my life. I have yet to see them tell somebody to sit down.
All right.
I'm not saying get up there and filibuster.
I was gonna say, it'd be more effective if you can limit your comments.
Yes, limited focused comments are always more effective.
Keep it focused on the issues in this case.
I've seen a few people go on, and everybody in the bill's like, oh, yeah.
I don't.
They will yell at you if you swear at them.
Yeah.
Thankfully, I'm fluent in foul language. So I do have something else to say, because I'm a well-known writer. And I just came up with this on the fly here, and I do everything in poetry. Use less, pay more. Yet I hear the outrage here, as the corporations that pollute the air pay less than I do. Thus I realize the problem is not only AES, but our lovely legislature, quote unquote, refusing to hear our voices, neglecting our concerns. But I wonder why people never vote. Thus, as I sit here, everything getting more expensive, never an end in sight, always a scam-venience at the end. Thus, I can no longer see a way out. Still I fight on, never giving up, making my voice heard, speaking out against corporate greed. Yes, my voice is raised, as I want to indeed. Still I have hope that more people do speak out along with me.
Got it.
Well said.
There's that one or the other.
Yeah. Submit that to the Indy Star.
That was mine.
Who else we got? Have we exhausted? Yes, sir.
As I recall, when AES purchased Indianapolis Power and Electric, we didn't have the same problems that we had with IPS. Sooner than just the problems that more was with AES, and AES was the problem company when they bought IPS. Now, is there another company that would be able to purchase the AES interest there in this area perhaps there? Would that be a possibility?
Another company that could purchase
You would
it?
buy an AE interest right here in this commission here. That would perhaps be better. I don't know if Duke would be better there or something like that.
There was a movement for a while by Charlie Goodman, if you remember him, but you do, Mr. Taylor. But he called on the state to revoke AES's IPL's franchise, which, you know, the state has the authority to do. They've never done it, but they certainly have the authority to revoke their franchise and give it to somebody else who will be more respectful of their customers.
Sir, your concern, I don't understand in today's societies why we have any monopolies. I have to caution the regulatory environment in the state of Indiana is so rich with opportunity to make money off of us that I don't know if another corporation coming in and buying AES wouldn't take advantage of the same loopholes that they've already got.
Especially BlackRock.
And I don't, not to discourage it, but here's the thing that I think we could focus on as residents. That graph, the one that stood out most to me, was the fact that AES has put a lot of this expansion and need and upgrades on the residents.
Yeah.
And the corporations and the industrial users who are going to be the people who use the most energy are actually paying less. Think about who owns those buildings, who owns those, it's all corporate greed. But to come to us and what was the number, 16%? What was the, and then the industrial users are at 1.5%?
Yeah, put that back up here, yeah.
I mean, couldn't you even it out?
Right.
I mean, I'm not saying, I mean, look at that graph. And when you look and see that the industrial transmission is 2.5% of the proposed increase, that's absurd. That is like.
To clarify, they're getting a 2.5% increase on their electricity rates.
So they're getting a 2 point, that's even more egregious.
Exactly.
I thought they were pulling. I
They're
mean,
getting a 13.5, yeah.
They get a discount.
and the power they use, I mean, can you imagine the industrial users, the amount of power they use versus what you use to turn on your.
They're gonna justify it by saying, well, they use so much more, they can't afford
But
it.
this to me is I'm gonna sit down after this.
They also get special contracts, they get sweetheart deals. They got exempted out of Energizing Indiana, they don't have to even pay for our energy efficiency.
People, I don't know how to tell you this, but if more people don't recognize that the state of Indiana is a state where corporations come here to take advantage of the people, and we have a General Assembly that supports that. Listen, there's no secret why most corporations come here and do business.
That's right.
You pay low wages, you get benefits like this, and the people who work hard for you every day are the ones who foot the bill. And I've been on my soapbox. If you don't see this, if we don't change this, we have nobody to blame but ourselves.
I think we get all our questions. Does anyone have a question?
Feel free to stay and talk with us after here.
And I'll say real quick, before we run away, if you are anyone who would pass out flyers for us or be in a high traffic area, please come up and see me. I will give you flyers. And thank you so much for being here.